Alright, so I'm making this video on the fly. Also, we have a special guest. My fiance Tyler's in the room, so if I talk to him or not to you guys, it's probably to him. I've been seeing a lot of struggling answers for your attendance quiz today, so I thought I'd make this video and just kind of go over some more problems because I think we need it. With number 2, the correct answer should be AC is 30, BD is 30, BE is 15, AB is 27, and BC, if you want to put in a decimal, would be 13.1, but it also would have been the square root of 171. Okay, so I think finding AC and BD shouldn't have been very hard, because if I look, AE is half of the diagonal, so 15 times 2 would have given me the whole length of AC, so 15 times 2 is 30. Then BD is the other diagonal, so those have to be congruent. And then BE is one part of the diagonal, so again, all the different parts in the diagonal are going to be congruent, so it's also 15. Next, if we look at AB, AB is opposite of CD, so that makes it 27 as well. And then this last side, we have to use Pythagorean theorem. So when we're finding BC, if I just look at this triangle, this side is 27, this side would be my x, what I'm trying to figure out. And then I know this diagonal is 30, so if you have x squared plus 27 squared equals 30 squared. Once you solve, that's how you get the x equals the square root of 171, or 13.1. Okay, with 4, by the way, it was really funny to listen, or not listen, but read all of your guys' things about what you're doing during this quarantine. I think I'm going to have to check out All American, because I saw that across the board. Like, that's what everyone's watching right now, I guess. So I'm going to check that out next. On 4, however, if we look at this angle right here, this 64, that's going to be congruent with this angle down here, because those are vertical angles. Then I told you guys to think about isosceles triangles. So if I know all of these sides are congruent, then I've made 4 isosceles triangles. And so if I want to figure out what these 2 angles are down here, they're going to be congruent to these up here. Okay? So let's see if I'm trying to figure out one of those first. So angle XWY, yep, so that would be this angle right here. So how I'm going to find that is, I know that all the angles in a triangle add up to 180, right? So if these 2 angles are the same, it's kind of like these are my 2 unknowns. And so I would have, this would be an unknown x. This is also the same angle, so I'm going to also call it x. So x plus 64 has to equal 180. So x plus x plus 64 equals 180. Then I can combine my 2 x's, so I get 2x plus 64 equals 180. Another way you can think about this is you subtract 64 from 180 and then divide that by 2. That's really what you're doing in this when I set up this equation. So if you just want to think about it as like splitting up those 2 angles into 2, and so you get 58 degrees. So make note of that, 58 degrees. The next angle I'm finding is angle YXZ. So YXZ would be this guy down here. Okay, so if I look at, get my pointer, this angle would be 58, this green angle that I'm trying to find, those have to add up to 90 degrees to make that right angle in my rectangle. So I'm going to take 90 minus 58, and that's how I get 32. Okay? The next angle, I'm pretty sure comes from knowing a linear pair. So WVZ, yep. So I'm finding this angle here. So when I find that angle, if I know there's 64 degrees, these added up together should equal 180. So I'm going to take 180 and subtract 64 to find this obtuse angle right here. And that turns out to be 116. And then the last two, I have angle XWZ. XWZ, well, that's just one of the right angles in the rectangle, so that one's pretty easy. It's 90 degrees. And the last angle is XZY. XZY. Well, that one is pretty easy now because of those first red angles that I marked up at the very beginning. These two have to be congruent. So this is also 58. On the next page, so I know I said do the odds and I messed that up in my video. You really should have done like 2, 4, 7 through 13 odd. So sorry about that if that was kind of confusing. For 7, I saw a lot of people get 7, but I'm still going to go over it really fast. RT, this is RT. RT is 5x minus 14. And then US is 2x plus 10. US is here. So you have to remember, guys, that our two diagonals are always congruent in a rectangle. So those are my red and yellow lines. So I'm just going to take 5x minus 14 and set it equal to 2x plus 10. Add 14 to both sides. Subtract 2x. Divide by 3. And I get x equals 8. Now, if you put in 8, close, but what you're being asked is to find VT. So VT is actually only half of one of these diagonals. So if I take x and I plug it in to RT, I'm going to have to take half of RT to only find VT. So I'm going to take 5 times 8 minus 14, and that equals 26. So this whole diagonal is 26 inches, feet, whatever unit you want it to be. So if I only want half of that, I have to take 26 divided by 2 to get VT, which is 13. Okay, and 9's a little tricky. I think because of partially like what you're trying to find, you might be like trying to dive too far right into finding this first. So always start with what you know. So VW is 9x minus 11. So VW is here. So that's only half of the diagonal. But if I want to think about it, half of that diagonal should be congruent here, here, and here. So I should make tick marks instead. So all of those pieces are congruent. Now when I think about SU, SU is this whole diagonal. Okay? Remember? VW is just half of that diagonal. So if I want to set anything equal to each other, I'm going to have to take double of VW in order for it to actually be equal to this SU. So I'm going to take 2 times 9x minus 11 equals 16x minus 12. You could have done this as multiplying by 2 or adding this twice, whatever you prefer. So I'm going to distribute, get 18x minus 22 equals 16x minus 12. Add 12 to both sides, and I get negative 10 equals, if I subtract 18x, sorry guys, negative 2x, divide by negative 2, and x equals 5. Okay, so if you got x equals 5, you're good. But we're wanting to find WT, so WT would just be this half of one of the diagonals. So WT should be congruent to VW. So all we have to do is plug in x for that VW of 9 times 5 minus 11, which would be 45 minus 11. So we get 34. And we're finding WT. Alright, so in this one, I'm not even going to pay attention to this part first. I'm just going to look at my picture. Right away, you should notice that these two angles are forming a right angle. So if you want to start, you can start by doing 3x plus 2 plus 12x minus 17 equals 90 degrees. So if I add those two together, they should sum to 90. So I get 15x minus 15 equals 90. And then 15x equals, if I add 15, 105, divide by 15, x equals 7. Okay, so now I've got to think about what am I actually finding. So angle JHI. That would be this angle in blue. Okay, that angle in blue just so happens to be congruent to this angle that I'm making yellow because of alternate interior angles. So I already know what that angle in yellow is. It's that 3x plus 2. So now I just got to take my x and plug it in. So I have 3 times 7 plus 2 equals 21 plus, I'm going to rewrite this a different way, 21 plus 2, which equals 23. So measure of angle JHI equals 23. However you want to write it. I'm going to have, this one you really have to use the fact that there's some isosceles triangle theorems going on here. So just remember that all of these diagonals, when they bisect, they're creating congruent segments. And then what's also happening is I have some congruent angles here, there, there, there. And then also my green angles down here. Okay? And then there's also some vertical angles and linear pairs going on throughout here. So if I first start, I'm solving for x. I don't know that this 5x plus 7 is equal to 134. So if you set those two equal to each other, that's not really the right place to start. Instead, I'm going to use what I know about triangles and isosceles triangles in particular. But first, I want to figure out what this angle is right here at the apex of this isosceles triangle. So if I look at this 134 degree angle and that apex angle in the triangle, those are forming what's called a linear pair. So if I want to figure out what that yellow angle I have shaded is, I'm going to take 180 minus 134 and I get 46 degrees. So this angle right in here is 46 degrees. Now I can start, because I know this angle and this angle are the same thing in the isosceles triangle. I also know that all the angles inside a triangle add up to 180. So if I take 46 plus 5x plus 7, so this angle plus this angle, plus this other third angle, which I know is 5x plus 7 again, they should equal 180. Now I'm just going to combine my like terms. So 46 plus 7 plus 7, I get 60 plus 10x is 5 plus 5, make those a little bit bigger, equals 180. Subtract 60, 10x equals 120, divide by 10, and x equals 12. And that's all you were doing for number 13. So hopefully you can make some corrections to your homework or your assignment for today. Don't worry about your points so much. Just make sure that you understand these concepts, and then we're going to do some more practice over just rectangles on Tuesday, okay?